What I would like to do, first of all, is just say on behalf of the church, Eric Fischel and April Gornick, we would like to welcome everybody to this, our first event, sort of at the church. We were terribly excited to welcome you into the garden and have you as our first on-site audience, but we are equally excited to have you on Zoom, and I would like to thank everybody, audience and panelists, for your flexibility. And decry the weather for its lack of flexibility. Just a little bit of housework to get started. We hope to talk for probably about 45 minutes and then open it up for questions. We will ask that you put the questions into the Q&A, which is on the bottom of the screen for the attendees. And we will answer as many of those as we can towards the end of the discussion. Also, just before we get started, I would like to thank our sponsors. We obviously could not do this entire series of events, present tense Black Lives Mattered, without them. So many, many thanks to the Sag Harbor Partnership, Kenby Foundation, L&B Market, Harbour Market, Honest Man Restaurant, East Hampton Star. Our larger project was organised by the church, the Arts Centre at Duck Creek, as well as Guildhall, and again with the collaboration of the East Hampton Star. And just a very, very special thanks goes to Christine Sciulli, who produced and basically was the ringmaster for this much larger project. And on behalf of the church, I would like to thank the village of Sag Harbor, which very generously gave us a special events project for this event, even though we couldn't use it. So to change gear after the official announcements, I hope Allanah, Allanah is back on, looking forward to seeing her.
She just needs to allow her video now, I believe.
Yes, so she should be able to do that.
Allanah, can you try to enable your video, please?
Okay, we will get on with the introductions while Allanah works with her video. Obviously, our first participant is Jeffrey Colvin, who is the author of AFRICAVILLE and has provided this unbelievable opportunity to work on all of this, these issues, and to produce all of these events. Jeffrey, thank you so much for your collaboration and your generosity of your time.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for having me.
Pleasure. Andrina Smith is a Shinnocock writer, author, and performer. She was also the director who produced last night's staged reading at Guildhall. Andrina, thank you for all of the hard work that you have done. It was a wonderful occasion last night. So thank you for being with us here.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for inviting me. I really appreciate that.
Enormous pleasure. Next, in alphabetical order, I would like to invite and to say hello to Bonnie Michelle Cannon, who is, of course, the Executive Director of the Bridgehampton Childcare and Recreational Centre and has been in that post since 2007. We all know the tremendous work that she has done there, and I would like to point out for today's conversation, on top of many, many other honours, she is also serving on the Suffolk County Human Rights Commission, and she is chair of the Town of Southampton's Housing Authority, which brings a special authority to, I think, some of the questions we will address today. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us. It's a pleasure.
Willie Jenkins, we are also delighted to have you. You're, of course, a community organizer, activist, founder of the Zenith Youth Programme and co-director of the Black Lives Matter of the East End. You have been very busy these last weeks. It only seems like months. And I'm sure you've also been very busy these last months, but we're very grateful to you for taking time to be with us today. And when she manages to join us, is the coordinating manager of the Comprehensive Psychiatric Emergency Program at Brookdale University Hospital and Medical Center. She is also a licensed therapist, and she is an honorary clinical instructor at Walden University. She will obviously bring a wealth of knowledge to the discussions today as soon as we can find her. So thank you everybody for being here. And I would like to start our discussion with a question for Jeffrey that I hope can lead us into a larger question for all of the panel. But Jeffrey, you have spent 20 years working on this novel. It obviously came out in the fall, which was a very, very different time scale. I would love for you to kind of kick off the discussion by talking about how the novel feels now, given this very, very changed national and international context. Obviously in the middle of a global pandemic, the Black Lives Matter demonstrations, and this tumultuous presidential election. So any thoughts that you have on that, I think our audience would be delighted to hear.
Well, thank you, Sarah. And as I mentioned last night, and Andrina and I have had a number of conversations about this, I started the novel nearly 20 years ago, and it came out of both my personal experiences and my having lived in the South. I was working on a series of short stories set along the march from Selma to Montgomery. And I'm sure many of the participants on the line today know about and have heard about some of the leaders of that march, Martin Luther King and others. But I was interested in the people who lived in the rural area along the march. What were their lives like? Did any of them march in the March for Voting Rights? If so, why? If not, why not? I had a personal connection to rural communities in Alabama since my grandmother raised her family in rural Alabama. So I used my own experiences and some research to write about these stories. And by the time I got to the 80s, I started writing stories set in the 60s. By the time I got to the 80s, a lot of the towns that I went back to visit, including the one my grandmother lived in, was all gone. And so there were all these communities in Alabama, Black communities, that no longer existed. But of course, the stories lived on. And in 2001, I read an article about a town in Halifax, Nova Scotia, that had been founded in the 1790s by a group of free Blacks, some of which would come up from the United States and also from the Caribbean. And so in the late 60s, the government of Halifax went in, forced everyone out of their homes and razed all of the houses and the church. And so in some ways, the marches that had started the stories, that is to say the Selma and Montgomery March and civil rights in the southern part of the United States, was now, in my mind, connected to the larger story for Black empowerment and the struggle against racism in Halifax. And so then from that, I could then begin to create and craft a novel. You asked how it was connected to the issues today. The novel is about 3 generations of one family from this village in Halifax, Nova Scotia. But over the course of the novel, a lot of the issues that happened to the families are certainly in the news today. The novel begins in 1918 with a pandemic very similar to COVID, in which the public medical profession has no cure. And because of racism, the Black community has to deal with. And so this is very similar to some of what's happening with the COVID pandemic. Throughout the course of the novel, early in the novel, one of the residents of the town is shot by the police in an altercation that should never have happened. And over the course of the novel, there are a number of protests. And then of course, one main character in the novel is incarcerated in the early 1900s and is still incarcerated in 1992. And so if you talk about police brutality, mass incarceration, over-policing by the police, these are many of the issues that have been dealt with and addressed in the novel. And so, and seeing what was happening today and also working with some of the other partners in the events this weekend, it allowed me to, and also the panel today allows me to talk about those issues. And also I want to hear what the other panelists has to say also, which will help me to think through these ideas as well.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Obviously, narrative and storytelling has a tremendous power on who we are, and perhaps to enlarge out from the novel to bring in the discussion of the current day, I would love to ask each of the panelists to actually perhaps talk about how you see kind of narrative affecting your lives, but also how it is changing as we live through this moment.
I'll jump in and start. Hi, everyone. The title that I most frequently give myself as an artist is storyteller. I have explored storytelling through a variety of mediums. Last night, I was storytelling through directing. My journey with Jeffrey creating this process was storytelling in the form of a script. I've done numerous solo performances because for my personal experience growing up, there weren't spaces for me in theater. I was told that they did not know what to do with me. And so early on, I learned that if I wanted my narrative shared, then it would be on me to create that narrative. And so as such, my experiences frequently influenced the art that I created. In fact, it was my way of processing. Growing up on the East End as a Shinnocock, as a Black woman, as a my family grew up low income. I had a single working mother. However, I went to East End private schools the whole time. And this amalgamation of all of those different worlds sat in me in a way that storytelling, again, was my form of process. I think that how that journey for me links to this moment now is that diverse narratives are finally, I don't want to say being told yet, because we are not to the point where nearly the representation equates to the amount of representation needed for our population. But people are willing to hear narratives. And what was beautiful about Jeffrey's piece, what was beautiful about what we created together was this opportunity to share Black stories. And I think we frequently lose sight of the fact that so many of our narratives from Hollywood, from theater, are told through the lens of the white gaze. And so not only do we have to open up the gates to allow people in, there are people who have the mic who have to be willing to turn theirs off so that the people sitting next to them can have a chance, because this system that we exist in was very excellently designed to prevent the narratives of people of color from flourishing and rising to the top. And what we're seeing right now is an opportunity, a very unique opportunity in this iteration of the world to make a change. And so again, I'm just grateful for this beautiful panel and the willingness that so many people on the East End are showing to say, hey, we're not doing enough. How can we change? So yeah.
Willie or Bonnie, would you like to add to that, please?
So how I see it is for myself is I see myself being a mouthpiece for my African American community, as well as the entire East End for the most part. The African American communities that that I'm from and you know, I grew up around and going to and being a part of, you know, we know them very well. When you're from here, you know them very well when you're part of the community. But you can go 20 minutes up the street and ask somebody and they'll be like, I didn't even know there was Black people in in the Hamptons. And it's the weirdest thing because it's like you're like hidden, and like they don't want you to be seen or known about, unless you're excelling. And like when we're winning basketball championships, everybody knew about the Bridgehampton Killer Bees, and it was like on the news and everything. But those same people would be like, I didn't know there was a black town in Bridgehampton. Like, but the whole team is pretty much black. Like the whole school is black when I was going there. Now it's a lot different. But so I always found that it was weird. It was sad. It was very confusing. But you got, life goes on. So I just try to, all the stories and the voices that I know that have so many things to say, so many talents, there's so much rich history. There's so much, there's so much depth. The things we go through that people have no idea about. It's like we've been screaming and saying, hey, this is going on, or hey, check this out. We're doing this here, or like the things that the center is such a great place, and now it's getting so much praise and shine on it, and everybody's getting to see it because of Bonnie's efforts and everything like that. Center's been there for years, and I'm so glad that Bonnie is here, and what she's been doing has been bringing such a light on it, and everybody else is taking notice now. Been born there from a baby, and everybody that's a part of the center been trying to do that, and it's such good programs come out of there, such good people, things like that. So it's just your book, sir, Jeffrey's book. It was awesome to see. The different times. It was interesting because it's like a mirror. The different times you go to a different place, but it's the same story, and it's like so funny because I'm from Bridgehampton. I'm from Narrow Lane, Turnpike, Crossway, Ham Court, all the same area. It's a low income African American place. When I go to Southampton to the Hill, it's like I'm in the same place. I know exactly what's going on. It's not nothing different to where like I really don't gotta adjust to how I feel comfortable. I'm home, but I can go 2 minutes and go on Main Street. I don't feel comfortable. It's not the same. But then I go to Riverhead, I go to the Greens, I go to the Doctor's Path. I feel comfortable, like it's the same thing. And I noticed that when he would move down, one would be in Halifax, and then it would be down south. It would be the same feeling, because it's the same type of stuff is going on and happening, but it's still hidden. It's hidden. The Hill is hidden. It's hidden in Southampton. I didn't know there was black people in Southampton on the Hill. Like, it's the same thing. And it just happens everywhere. And it's just time for people to wake up, see it, you know what I'm saying, address it, let the people in those neighborhoods shine, let their voices be heard. The gentrification, it's not Tulsa where it's being bombed, but it's the same thing. It's getting eliminated. Bridgehampton is gone. It's pretty much gone. Our town is gone. That's why I hold Bridgehampton Day. So it's like he came back home and his town was gone. Like his grandmother's town was gone. I came home, my town was completely different. Like, it's specks of people that's still there, but it's not the same. And it's like, we did so much and worked so hard, and we cherish that. Like you call it, a lot of people call it the hood, but then you come to cherish what you've been through and what you go through, and then you hold it in such, I came from this, look what we do, look who we are, where we come from. So the pride is there, but then it gets taken away from you because it's like, well, now your town's not even there. So it's just, I appreciate you guys giving us a chance to speak about our experiences, whether it's through racism, police brutality, anything like that, growing up in a certain area and how it was, especially African-American community. So it's just, I want to enlighten you guys, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that. And I appreciate your work, so, because it was awesome seeing that. It's like a mirror.
I mean, obviously that's a huge problem, and it is. I would like to talk a little bit more about housing, and obviously Bonnie's going to have some great expertise there in that area. But just before we do that, Allanah, welcome. Thank you. I'm very glad you're here. I think you're on mute, so can you?
Yeah, sorry about my technical issues. Thank you.
We're just very happy you're here. We're talking a little bit about narrative and how narrative coming out of a discussion of Jeffrey's book, how that actually changes perhaps experiences in your life and where the narrative is now. And I think that Willie has just brought up a wonderful point. Given the structural problems here in the East End, is discussing narrative even enough? So I don't know if Bonnie or Allanah, which one of you would like to take that, but I'd love to hear your input.
You know, I am I'm a local. I mean, I no longer live in East Hampton, but I've grown up. I was born and raised, born in Southampton, raised in East Hampton, and to be honest with you, the narratives haven't changed as much. You know, I do see people who are school age and elementary school going through some of the similar race issues that I may have gone through as a child. And to say that, you know, talking about it is enough, I think that the actions that people are starting to take now is what's probably going to help things. But the narrative, I would say, if you're talking about like how much things have changed in the area, I would say that it has not. Not that much, but I'm back and forth quite a bit. And based on what I've seen from the school systems, it's very different. It's much bigger. There's a lot more students. It's definitely more diverse than when I was here. So some things have changed, but I would say overall the narrative has not really changed as much. I don't know if that helps with the answering question.
Okay, hi, this is Bonnie, and I guess my comment that I would have is, first of all, everything seems to be cyclical. It goes around in cycles, and basically, I think that I know when I was growing up, I was born and raised here in the Hamptons, in Southampton, and everything here, even though we were separate, even though you had communities such as the Hill, even though you had, you know, the Bridgehampton community, and even in East Hampton, and, you know, everywhere in every place in the Hamptons, trust me, there are Black people there. And so it's just a lot of people didn't know about it, but we were a community, we were a village, you know, we were together. And I remember, you know, being able to walk downtown to Southampton and the village, and, you know, it wasn't just Black people that knew you, but white people knew you as well. And growing up in the schools, it was a community type of a thing there. At the same time, we did have things such as the Black Student Union that existed when I was in school. And nowadays, I don't know if that exists anymore, if they even have Black student unions anymore. And also, you know, when we were growing up, there was some camaraderie between the communities, and everyone was together. Everyone was particularly together. And now, you know, when we get to this point where we're now, things have changed somewhat, sort of, so that you don't have those same types of togetherness. But unfortunately, out of tragedy, individuals come together. And I think that what I'm seeing is, out of the unfortunate tragedy that we're seeing with I would say even the pandemic, with the George Floyd incident, that now it has shed light and opened up eyes and woke people up again to, you know, the issues that we need to address, and not wipe them on this kind of ripped off the Band-Aid. So nobody can say that, you know, racism doesn't exist, and that racism doesn't exist in the Hamptons, and that we don't still need to do work around it. So when we talk about the narratives, now the narratives have always been spoken about, but the question is, have people been listening? So as Andrina has said earlier, I think that more people are willing and open to listen to the narratives, because that's what you want. When you're speaking of narratives, you want people to listen to you. You want them to hear you. You want them to receive what it is that you're saying. So now we're hearing more of narratives coming from not other people, but just from us, from Black people, from ourselves, telling our stories, telling our narratives. More people are interested in wanting to know, well, what can we do? do? What can we say? What are, you know, that's what all I get every day now is like, well, how can we change this? Because there is a problem. So it's kind of now brought us to the forefront where we can address all of the issues that are happening. And it's just not police brutality. I mean, we're dealing with health disparities. We're dealing with educational disparities. We're dealing with wealth disparities. We're dealing any disparity that there is, we're dealing with it. So it's shined a light on all of the disparities, as well as looking at the true history of Black people. What is the history of Black people that we don't have in our school system, that we don't talk about? And, you know, people are more open to hearing that dialogue now. So we have some synergies and some opportunities now to really take advantage of you know, what this tragedy has happened. And if you look at the history of the center, the Bridgehampton Child Care and Recreational Center, that actually came out of a tragedy as well. A lot of people don't know that history, but the history of the Bridgehampton Child Care and Recreational Center was basically migrants that came up from North Carolina came up here to work in the potato fields. They were actually working, and they would have to leave their children at home. And so they would leave their children at home. And this one particular day, a couple went off to work, left their children in a chicken coop. There was a lantern in that chicken coop. It overturned, and the children burned, and they died. And out of that tragedy, the community came together, and hence began the Bridgehampton Child Care and Recreational Center. And that was back in the 1940s, and land was donated by a white couple. That was donated, the 6 acres that we're on now. Then we were incorporated back in 1954, and hence you have the Bridgehampton Child Care Recreational Center doing what we do, is serving the East End, marginalized East End families and children on the East End. So a lot of times it takes a tragedy or something to kind of wake, unfortunately, to wake people up and to make us really see, you know, what's going on. But we need to not lose sight of the fact that it's not just the brutality and what happened to George Floyd, but it basically is a whole realm of things that need to be addressed, coming from, like I said, wealth, educational, health, you name it. It's there, and now we have the time to address it. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not with what I was saying, but that's kind of my thought process and my input on what you had just asked me to talk about.
And Sara, I'm so sorry. I wanted to piggyback really quickly off of something that Bonnie said, because when she mentioned our histories, this is a continual tactic that we see, the erasure of Black and Native histories. Again, for me, it's impossible to separate on the East End the struggles of both the Black communities and Shinnocock, because for me, the layovers are so, the similarities between the way the town has dealt with both histories is so compatible, because it is not an accident that we don't talk about historical Southampton. It is not an accident that the oldest colony in the state of New York, one of the most historically rich elements, that it is ignored. You know, we have grave sites that we ignore because people need to make big McMansions. We don't talk about Azarus. We don't talk about the Black wealthy communities that existed in Sag Harbor. What we have is we talk about slavery, and then we talk about the civil rights, and then we talk about Martin Luther King, and then we got Barack Obama, so everything's great, right? And it's this notion of the everyday person. It is not just the greats, the bigs, these huge monoliths that make the changes. It is the everyday people. It is the community members like Willie Jenkins, who, when I grew up, Willie just knew everybody. He in a way, he is a historian for the time that we lived in, because he remembers everything and knows everyone. And it's just so beautiful to see that transformation now turn into activism, now turn into this kind of motivation to help inspire the community. But these stories never took priority,
Right, and when you talk about the inspiration, I just want to piggyback on this.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, no, then when we talk about the inspiration, because there is a rich history, and our kids don't know who they are and whose they are. So when you look at someone like a Willie Jenkins who has created this Zenith the Zenith Youth Group that he's going to be teaching, history, our history. And then you look at like the Brenda Simmons that are, dealing with the Southampton African American Museum that's going to be coming out in November. And you look at the Dr. Georgette Greer's with the Eastfield Historical Society in Sag Harbor and all of the work that they do, the good work that they do. These are where our rich histories. And what I'm saying to people is, yes, we still need to petition. We still need to push our school systems and to say to them, yes, we need to have these histories taught in our school systems. We need to, hear that. And when I talk about history, I'm not saying just history so our Black children and our Black people can hear it, but everybody needs to understand what our history is, not just Black, but white as well. So what I'm saying is, even if the schools don't do it, then we are responsible and accountable ourselves to make it happen. We don't have to wait on the schools. We can create our own programs. We can create our own narratives. We can create our own spaces where we are teaching these histories ourselves. And that is exactly what we're doing. And that's why the Zenith program is coming to the center. And Willie will be putting that program out for everyone to hear. And others such as Andrina is doing her narratives and she's doing her theater. So we're not waiting. We're not waiting for people to do what's right. We're we're moving forward and we're doing what needs to be done. Now, the difference today is that people are willing to hear and they're willing to listen, which is a good thing.
I also wanted to piggyback on something that both you and Andrina said. First of all, Bonnie, I wanted to thank you for that really rich history about Bridgehampton. I didn't know. I grew up here, and this something happened in the 1940s. Yeah. So it's a good point. I grew up in East Hampton High School. Our books. This is something I know you said we shouldn't wait, and it's years later. I graduated from 19 whatever from high school, and to me, learning about these things now, I feel like I've lost a lot because our books, our textbooks, we read books about slavery, we read books, they showed images that were traumatizing, with people being sprayed with hoses, but they didn't talk about our other rich history. They didn't talk about the good things, the things that Black people invented, the things that were thought of by Blacks in history. And I'm talking worldwide as well, but locally, learning about that in the potato farms was something that I wish that maybe I could have learned in school. And I think that it starts with our school books and our textbooks. I think we need to completely, change the whole textbook system and change the readings that these kids are assigned to, like To Kill a Mockingbird. These aren't really historic books. They're stories, but we need history. We need history about who we are, like you said, about who we are, who they are. We're all told that who we are, but we're not really taught. We aren't really taught our rich history. And like you said, there's Black people all over the Hamptons and history in Sag Harbor that goes way back to the 1800s. This is not something we've ever learned about until now.
And I think Andrina has brought up such an interesting, all the interesting points that are being discussed, which is about individual experience. And the fact that, trauma, we know that it now passes down through DNA. Allanah, I would love to hear you talk about, how in the spirit of moving forward and taking action, how perhaps also we can address ideas of trauma, both in the African-American community, as well as other peoples of color.
Yes, so trauma is, it's definitely a real thing. There's actually, as you know, I do therapy and I work with a a population that has mental illness. So a lot of people don't realize that the traumas in the African-American community consist of growing up in homes where they're neglected, or just in general, the communities that they are growing up in, like they consider public housing. Through the pandemic, we've learned things about how children can't eat because they can't go to school. There's something wrong with our system there, right? That's traumatic. And you mentioned the DNA. It's in fact, you know, people of color in general really don't have the DNA that is forgiving of these traumas. It's something that still lives within them, and it does cause mental illness. It causes truancy, and people don't realize that the trauma of people goes way back to slavery. Like that, when people talk about, oh, it was 400 years ago, we need to forget. It really is something that affects us today. And as a matter of fact, I can actually recommend a very good book to people called Urban Trauma, written by a child psychologist named Maisa Akbar. And it really does talk in depth about resiliency. And if people don't know what resiliency is, it's about going through traumas in life, but however you deal with them, you use them to either lift yourself up, or you use them to bring yourself down. And resilience means that no matter what your environment is, no matter what you've been through in life, you still excel. And the majority of us in life, Black or white, have been through traumas. It's just a matter of how we deal with them. So, but yes, it is in our DNA to not have gotten over slavery. And I know it does sound like really, it's in that book as well. It does sound like it could be far-fetched, but it definitely is real.
That's not far-fetched at all. Like,
yeah,
slavery initiated the process, and now we're doing the aftermath, and just haven't connected the dots from that point to this.
Right. So fast forward to George Floyd getting killed, and this is something that's flashed on the screen on a daily basis. You know, we get traumatized by these images as well. These images of the civil rights movement that they show in high schools, and slavery, the movies that they've shown about slavery, these are all traumatizing. So these all things, if you fast forward to now and they're showing the images we see now of protesting and riots, it's something that's traumatic. But what I say about moving on today is, I think that people need to really look in with themselves. And I think Black and white, we need to figure out who we are as far as a people and share that amongst us. But we have to share that amongst all people of color. So, and I think that what's changed now is people, like Sara mentioned, people are really asking questions. They really want to know about our history, about why people are so, you know, enraged about the killing of George Floyd, for example. People reached out to me and said, what can I do to help? The thing is listening. That's really something important, is listening to each other. And I'm noticing that's happening now more. I mean, having conversations like this, I don't think could have been as easy 5 years ago for some people. But I see a lot more of these conversations happening, and to talk through your traumas and share them amongst each other. Because I think that we're all traumatized, you know, Black and white, from seeing some of these images, but it affects us all differently. And that's why I feel like it's important for everyone to listen to the views. And when people ask about how they can help, researching, listening to their fellow co-workers, for example. People saw the killing of George Floyd and had to go to work the next day. And it's just, nobody really knows how to react to other people when they see this. They don't really know how. I think that being open, like you guys are all saying, and asking questions, there's nothing wrong with asking questions. I'm always willing to answer questions. And I've dealt with people who have had traumas through this because they've been traumatized in some other way, and they're re-traumatized through all these things in the media. So the resilience is the key. And that's taking your traumas and turning them into something positive. It's a process, but something I could go into in another time. But that's a very good book that I can recommend to people if you wanted to learn about the trauma of young people and where it starts.
Yeah, I think the trauma is, you know, it's real, but us as historically as Black people, you know, when you talk about mental illness, when you talk about therapy, you know, we don't historically believe in, you know, therapy and going to therapists and, you know, that sort of thing. I think that, and that's the difference when you say that how the Black people deal with it versus white people. White people,
stigma.
Yeah,
it's very much stigmatized.
They do therapy, they have therapists and that sort of thing, but we, you know, we don't address.
God is my therapist, you know.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of we have the, you know, we depend on our spiritualness and that sort of thing. And I think that it's getting out more and more today, and more are open to, you know, therapy and therapists. But even when you talk about the trauma traumatization from a slavery background and the civil rights background, but I'm talking about just day-to-day traumatization that we have. And again, when you look at the anxieties and the things that our people are going through, when you look at the COVID-19 and know that most of the individuals that are out there on the front line are people of color, and you know, others that are, you know, that are better off. They don't have to be out there on the front line, but our folks, the majority of them are out there on the front line. So you talk about some anxiety and some traumatization when you have to go out there and you have to serve other people, knowing that, you know, your life may be in danger, and then you may be bringing something home to your family. That's a whole traumatization within itself. And then knowing that when I don't have a health insurance, I don't have the same health insurance and things that I need, or my health is bad, that I'm already in the precondition tally because of the fact that I'm eating bad. I'm not, you know, all of the different health disparities that we have. That right there is traumatizing within itself. And then knowing that I got to be out there and I got to work 40 or 50 or 60 hours a week because I have to, because I got to pay my bills, I got to take care of my kids, I take care of my family. But I might die when I go out there, but I got to go out there because of the fact that these is my responsibilities that I have, and I have to pay the rent. But my rent is too high because, and I can't afford it. I mean, all of these things right there, all of those things, you know, they all, like I said, they point back to that, all of the disparities that have gone on with minorities for ages, year after year after year. So yes, the conversations are good, and yes, we need to continue to have the conversations because people are now open to listen more than ever.
Right.
But behind that, we have to have some action.
Right.
We have to have some action and some things that are happening behind that, you know. So that's where, you know, when we talk about what can other people do, yes, we want you to listen, but we want you to also be there with us when we try to, when we put forth these efforts and the policies for, you know, the police brutality. We want you there with us, also behind us, and we want you all to make some action. You know,
but I also, I'm sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
When we talk about jobs and making more money and that sort of thing, we want you to open up more opportunities for us to get jobs and to get the right education and the educational tools and things as well. So, you know, it's kind of like put your money where your mouth is, or put your, you know, put your experiences where your mouth is. We're having a program at the center called Teach Me How to Fish, work training program, and I'm looking for industries to back me on this in different tracks, so that when we put these kids through and they're qualified, that you have opportunities and doors open for them to get jobs, and get good jobs where they can be able to take care of themselves, or to open up a business of their own. So we want some actions behind that as well.
Right. Speaking of action, that's the question. The other trauma that we hear about the coronavirus, and then we hear that people of color are disproportionately affected. But the question is, what are they doing about it? You know, that's the question. So it came up as a conversation with me and my girlfriends, how Black women are disproportionately losing children late in child and bearing.
Yes.
And it has nothing to do with our education. It has nothing to do with us going to the doctor. It has nothing to do with us not wanting to take care of our children. But it's something else. It's how we're treated when we go to the doctor. So this is now a conversation we have with each other. When you go to your doctor, make sure you tell him this. Make sure you ask this.
Yes.
Because we have to have conversations with them. They have to listen to us now about our heart problems, about our childbirthing problems. You go to a doctor and they turn you away for having a little bit of a chest pain, but that's heart disease. But they're not telling us that. They're not taking Black women, for example, as seriously. So these are conversations like when you say action and you say how we can't wait and we have to start on our own. That's one of the things that me and my girlfriends have talked about. For example, talk to your doctors about the real issues, make them give you the time.
Yes.
And one of the things that, and this is just a quick note, one of the things that I was recently told is that when you go to the doctor and if he dismisses a claim of yours, you should say, oh, can you please make a note that you're dismissing me?
Exactly.
And then switches around. And it's this notion of being able, the onus always falls on us to be able to advocate for yourself and be able to stand up for yourself and be able to do this. I just don't know when we're going to become a priority. Like that we're not a priority for white people. As a whole, we are not a priority. Even the word matter is problematic for some. We're just trying to have a presence and be allowed a decent existence, and even that is too controversial for people. So I literally, I don't know what to do sometimes. I'm like, white people, you guys are secluded in your white neighborhoods with your protections that your white privilege affords, and it looks pretty comfortable. But know what that life is doing, and know the people who are affected by causing this protected existence that you get to live. And so until white people are really able to say, oh, this is causing harm, I have to open this up and make the other members of our society a priority, nothing's gonna change.
And the thing is like, how long have they known there's health disparities? We've always known that Black women have more heart disease. Black people in general in New York City are stricken with diabetes. We've known this for years, but when coronavirus comes out, like, we don't know why Black people are so
Oh my gosh, it's crazy.
So that was really scary, because it's years and years that we've all known this, and they're asking the questions, but what are they actually doing? That's what we need to know. What are they actually doing to help it when they've talked about this since March? So we're going to hold them accountable.
And I got to jump in, because again, we're and you're right, Andrina, when are people going to step up? When are they going to step up? But again, I say to you all, I think Black people are tired. We're not waiting no more. We're not waiting anymore for that. And with that, I can tell you that the state of Black Long Island, out of the Urban League, there's a council, and they have done a study, and they're doing action on the health disparities. I can tell you that the town of Babylon and the Witness Project of Long Island, this, I think it's August the 20th, is having an event called Know Your Rights, a community conversation about health, patients' rights, and self-advocacy. So all of these things are being discussed. They're being discussed, and folks are hitting it from every angle, which I think is great, because it's going to take a village for us to address all of these different types of issues. But that is going to be talked about on August the 20th, this coming week, about
Babylon?
Being an advocate.
So I would love, talking about taking action, to hear a little bit more from Willie about the organization of the events that Black Lives Matter Long Island have been doing, and how you are feeling about those actions.
Sure. We've just been trying to spread awareness around any, George Floyd was the spark, but even before that, 2000, I think it was 15, 14, when Philando Castile got killed, and Alton Sterling, we were just like, yo, this is crazy. It's cameras, people are seeing this. It's not somebody's word from somebody else's word. Like that, like you have to see, like, because it's always been a thing where it's like, well, we would agree with you guys, but he probably was doing this, or he probably was doing that, and it's always a little bit of a deniability to where now the cameras are so clear on everything. It's like, all right, the man, it don't matter what he was doing before. It don't matter if he was a Cold Stone killer beforehand. It doesn't matter what it is. It does not matter what he was doing. If he's subdued, he has his hand behind his back, why is he dying at this point? Why is Black men dying like this?
When Dylan got to get Burger King after murdering 10 people in a church in North Carolina.
And it just so happens that it was a dude getting murdered. It's a myriad of other things that it could have been. It could have been just being picked on in the store, followed around. Somebody could have, anything. You see all the Karens. Somebody's jogging in Central Park, say, hey, you shouldn't do that. Oh, no, this Black man's attacking me. He wasn't attacking you. Like, but it just happens to be that catalyst where it's like, no, there's no way you're doing this. So we are that voice that's carrying the wave, and we're saying, hey, enough is enough. We want equality and justice, and we want justice throughout, period, throughout all systems. We just want it. It's time. Look, there's no excuses. You can't say anything. You can't say anything. We could be quiet about it and deal with it. We've been dealing with it. We speak up. They silence you. You speak up. They silence you. It's just enough is enough. We're not being silenced anymore. It's just you gotta just put your foot down and know when to take charge. And that's what we're doing now, because it's like there's no way around that. You can't. I don't think there's no argument, even though they're trying to say, well, he was on. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. If you're a human being, when that gentleman lost his life and he couldn't breathe, and he had his handcuffed behind his back, there's no excuse. So many other people agreed, and so much outcry from the white population, from the Spanish population to help, and it strengthened what we were saying, and finally our voice wasn't alone. You gotta use that opportunity and say, now is the time to, hey man, we gotta get this. This shouldn't be a thing anymore. It's been 400 years of this. This shouldn't be a thing. And even now they're trying to silence us now. It's really sad to see. And one of the most disturbing things, and you talk about trauma, the Black Lives Matter movement is a movement. Some people have organizations, but it's really just a movement with tons of different organizations that come together. Their basic thing is we want justice for African Americans and equal rights and to end systemic racism. Everybody should get treated the same. Not better than white people. We don't want more. We don't want to take over the country. Nothing. But with this nonsense with the Montauk Brewing company, the beer brewing company, the Facebook group, literally their mission statement is to go against Black Lives Matter because they're a terrorist organization that's anti-American. So are you saying equality is anti-American? That's all we're not looking to take over the White House. We're not nothing. It's weird. And it's like all these false narratives are being painted. And it's like, I understand somebody really not knowing. And they're like, oh, I think this is this. But when it's just done purposely, you can see it. And it's like, you're trying to subvert something that's genuinely just trying to get the same foothold you have. They don't want that. Or whoever it is, they don't want that. So it's like, it's really like, oh, it hurts. It's like, what did we ever do to you? But they're making up stuff that we're doing and not even using the basic common sense. If I can give an example, if you go on the page, the brewery page, somebody posted a letter and it said that Black Lives Matter sent this letter saying that if you don't donate to Black Lives Matter, we're going to destroy your business or come mess up your business. And I've read the comments. I said, this is interesting. Let me read these comments just to see how many people believe this is true. So the comments are like, oh, isn't that extortion? That's crazy. Oh man, the Black Lives Matter is evil. They're devils. Da, 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 da. Evidence presented, maybe you would think that, right? But maybe they don't know how extortion works. So if you were going to extort somebody, this is just basic common sense. You would do it in person with no cameras around, where you would threaten them, they know it's you, but nobody else knows it's you, because then you would go to jail. You're not going to write a letter and say, hey, our organization is extorting you. Show this to the FBI or the police, and we're going to give you our address or our organization's information. Somebody wrote that letter just as a thing and signed it Black Lives Matter. It's funny. You can clearly see that's what happened. But the problem is the people that believe that. They just believe it because they're not even trying to use their common sense. Like if Nike was going to extort Adidas out of, hey, you guys better shut down. They're not going to say, sign Nike and give them a letter and say, do that. That's not going to happen. That's not how extortion works. So it's like the most basic common sense gets thrown out the window when it comes to, you trying to get what you want across and you not wanting other people to get what they want across. Everything turns into the left, everything turns into right, when it's not any of that. It's basic human decency and rights. And it's really saddening and disheartening, and that's trauma. Because other races experience that, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I don't really think a lot of white people experience just that, and not in the way that we do. And it's not a knock against white people or anything like that. It's just, other races experiences it in a different way that I don't think a lot of white people understand. Like somebody's really like, you're trying to get a good point across, like this is good, this is right, it's time. It's just like, no, like, no, you're evil, you're wrong, like we're just gonna say, like, literally Trump just says Joe Biden hates police, and people eat it up. He doesn't even articulate anything. He just says Joe Biden hates the police, and then everybody that follows that believes in Trump, they're just like, Joe Biden, yeah, he hates police. It's the most comical and sad thing ever. And it's, forget Trump, forget Biden, forget left, right, but just think about that you could do that. It's because you don't want to. So we gotta work together, and we gotta find a way for everybody to listen and understand, because nobody wants to listen. Everybody wants to type on Facebook, and they want to type on news posts, and they want to be able to say what they want to say and just be silent. Nobody ever wants to have a intelligent conversation, which I'm willing to do. I'm willing to teach. I'm willing to listen, see maybe why you have these fears, and get rid of some of your bad feelings, because that's not the case. But the people that are spewing the hate, they don't want to have those conversations. They just want to say it, get in and get out. They don't want to have a conversation. Some of the people, I think they should be on this call or other calls or something. I know we're talking about your book and how it applies to our lives and our experiences and all that. But I just had to say that, because we were talking about trauma earlier, and that is very traumatizing. It makes you feel like people, like everyone hates you. Just imagine walking around, like, why are we having this conversation? Why am I on this call? Why am I had to start a group? For everybody else has their history. Like a lot of people have their history. Like me and Andrina, do we have to fight to get our histories heard? And you got to write a whole book and like to get those stories out there to where people they should just know these things, but they don't want to know. They don't want to change. They don't want to know. So we got to fight to understanding, fight for listening. And real listening, not just hearing, like really listening and understanding what's going on, why it's happening, and not just somebody talking. Because I can talk all day. I can say a bunch of stuff. I can say Black Lives Matter all day. So I'm blue in the face. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to believe it. I got to tell them why they matter, why we're important. That's why we're doing the Zenith View program. Why our African history is important. African American history is important. Hey, this is the facts of this situation. So that's how I feel about it.
Willie, you bring up such an interesting point, because my understanding is that Black Lives Matter, as opposed to the civil rights movement in the 60s, which was quite centralized, the Black Lives Matter movement is quite decentralized. So, I mean, that is just, you bring up this point of identifying who is Black Lives Matter. I mean, what is your experience as someone who is an organizer for Black Lives Matter?
It's more a movement. Like it's more movement. Like, I'm so tired of explaining it, but not that you asked, I'm tired, but it's just like, you get it. When we say like it really, they like anybody trying to paint another narrative, it's like so tiring to explain. Like, we matter too. Like, I don't think I should have to change the acronym to put two, like, so you can feel better about yourself. You've been feeling good. We've been feeling bad. I'm from the hood. You didn't grow up like me. Like, you were fine probably. like you didn't experience the hate and the things things like that. Like, I can't speak to everybody's experiences, but I've seen it. I've been around. Like, we are in the Hamptons, so we have it's not like somebody in okay, let's say it's in Southside Chicago where they're not there. Southside Chicago is all the hood. Like, it's like, I'm from the hood, but I'm like around like rich, wealthy people. So when I can literally cross the highway and go and be in somebody's rich house, so I have a different perspective, but I'm still from that. So it's like, I can say, no, nothing happened to you. I know that, I'm around y'all. I know that y'all is nothing, you didn't go through nothing traumatic or, unless it's a personal experience in your family or something, you didn't have this deal with the same things. I know you don't go through those things. And that, and that's pretty much across the board, and it's just like, except for, lower class, lower income, white people that, have their problems and that stuff. But if you're in a certain level, you're like bulletproof and nothing phases you. And it takes a lot for Black people to get to that level. You got to be Jay-Z-esque to get to that level. You got to work extra hard. So it was an interesting thing. My friend's dad was telling me when I was growing up, like 19 and 18, we got in a fight, and he sat us down, and he was white, and I stayed with him because I was having trouble in my home, and I moved into his house, and they were Republican, but they took good care of me, and I love them to this day, and they were great. And he was telling me something so good. I said, you don't know what it's like being from here. People treat you different. He said, that's bullshit. He said, hey man, everybody is their own man. You have the same opportunity as everybody else, and you can do whatever you want. You just have to work just as hard. And I thought about it, and I listened to him, and I really wanted to listen to him. And I said, you know what, you're right. I said, I can't make no excuses. He said, you're making excuses. Just do what you got to do. And I always became a hard worker, more so after that. But then it would always be like obstacles and obstacles and obstacles and obstacles. And I'm like, damn, man, like, but no, this person said, and I'm going to listen to them. I got afforded every opportunity. And I'm like, damn, I'm not seeing my friend going through this. Like, are you going through it? Nah, you're not going through this person ain't. All right, whatever. I got to work. And just do it. I got to just do it. I got to do it. And it's just like, what, man? It's 8,000 hurdles I got to jump over. There's no hurdles that they went through. And I see it. It's not just me telling you, and it's not a hypothesis. There's no hurdles that they're going through. They you know what I mean? There's some setbacks in life that everybody has that are the same. But the hurdles I got to go through is way different. It's like, I want to sit down and tell him, hey, listen, I appreciate you so much because I'm such a better man for what you said, and it make me work harder. But bro, there's definitely hurdles, and you don't got them. So I want you to understand that that's the difference I'm talking about.
I want to jump in and say, you're talking about the black tax, am I right? Is what we call the black tax, where we, as the people, have to work so much harder to get to the same place as our colleagues. Yeah. It's definitely a fact. It's definitely a fact. I've gone through it myself in corporate America, even now in my current position. You just kind of have to work a little bit harder for what you want than that person next to you that has the same exact qualifications. And back to what you were saying about Black Lives Matter and how people react to it is traumatizing. Can you imagine we ask for more than mattering? We ask to be important? Black lives are important. Equality? What if we ask for that much? We're just asking to matter, and people are saying, no, all lives matter. Yeah, just like Willie was saying, they know what they're saying when they say all lives matter. They know that they're debunking Black Lives Matter. But imagine if we asked to more than matter. Imagine if we said Black lives are just as important as others. We're not even saying that. We're saying they matter.
There's a Southampton. Oh, sorry, Willie. What were you saying?
Your name can be a liability. I'm blessed that my name is Willie. My sister's name is Shaquana. I worked in a job. I was a manager. So they forgot I was in the room, and they were doing the hiring process. They said, "Oh, this name sounds too black. We can't hire them." And I was like, "What? Like, this is real? This really happened? Your name can make you a liability." And it's funny, but it's real life. This is your name. That's just your name. Just imagine how many other things how their hair is.
And then simultaneously, I'm so sorry to cut you off, but then in September, the Southampton Police Department is going to have a Blue Lives Matter rally, and they didn't coin Blue Lives Matter. There's a different phrase that they use. I'm like, y'all are the wealthiest police department in the country, in the Hamptons. What are you doing? That's so aggressive. And I'm not saying that their job, that being a police officer is not hard, but I'm like, wealthiest in the nation, in the Hamptons. And so you still feel the need because of the Black Lives Matter protest to stay. Oh man, blue lives. And it's like, first of all, they're not blue. And second of all, like, why is it that when people stand up for themselves and their voice, this immediate repulsion or this need to be like, oh, but us too, look at this, rather than sitting with those stories and sitting with those narratives and being able to see people's experiences different from your own, Like Willie was just saying, what would it be like if white men were able to see that the views that they get to walk through the world with is a privilege unique to them, and everyone doesn't get that.
A lot of people don't believe that there is white privilege, but there is white privilege. That's what it is. It's white privilege. I mean,
You get tired of explaining. You get tired of explaining. I'm going to cut you off.
yeah, just think about, you know, the Willie with his name, Black people have to consider names that we give our children, because we don't want to be, seen as for our kids to get slighted or whatever. We have to take that into consideration, what you name your child. And I know that even though I love my child's name, but I can say that I did consider it when he was born. What is his name? That thought did come into my mind. What am I going to name my child? I named him a name that I liked, but I'm just being real, and that's something that we shouldn't have to do. And that's something when somebody sees something on the application, if it's Shaquana or Willie or whoever, that shouldn't, be taken into consideration, but it is. It certainly is. And then when you talk about the white privilege, just basically you walk in the door, somebody sees you, and they already have perceptions about you and you haven't even opened up your mouth, or they don't even see you, and they look at the application and they see the name, the name of the person, and you're not selected because of that. Again, which goes back to, and I'm gonna keep talking about it, us taking accountability and responsibility and making and pushing forth. And that's what I like about what Willie and some of the younger people are doing. I mean, I'm there in spirit, because I'm too old now, so I'm not out there on the I've been out there, I've been there, done that. But I'm like, go forth, children, go forth and do what needs to be done. Push forth. Make people listen to you, and we're here to support in any way necessary. But that's why I talk about teach me how to fish. Yes, everybody's talking about the aid that's given, and everybody wants a handout and all this. That's not true. Just give me the opportunity. Teach me the same way that you were taught. Let me have the same opportunities that you're given. Basically let me in the door when you're in the door. Hold the door open so that I can walk in the door as well. Erase Racism, Elaine Gross, wonderful organization. They have this flyer that's called Structural Racism. That is a flyer, is a powerful flyer. If you haven't seen it, go up there on Erase Racism's website and check out that flyer and all the work that they're doing around erasing racism and structural racism. And you'll see kind of, again, that cyclical effect that I've been talking about. But white privilege does exist. I don't care what people say, it does exist. And they think just because Obama was made president that it was over, oh, they have a Black president, that's it. No. In actuality, in some cases, it made things a tad bit, worse for some people. I mean, it's a great thing that we have it, but I'm just saying the struggles still exist, and we talk about that white privilege. So, I'm just saying is there.
And I wanted to address,
sorry, we're coming up to time, and I really hate to cut off this conversation. And what I would like to do is say that we will do this again. But before we do end the session, I would very much like to hear from Jeffrey, just to sum up. Sorry, Jeffrey, that's really jumping it on you, but.
Well, thank you all. And as I said, I've been steeped in this novel, which is, as I said, steeped in stories from the Southern United States and also Halifax. But certainly, at the opening of my book, one of the points I make is what Baldwin said, is that life is not very different for the child in Birmingham as it is in San Francisco. The same can be said, as Willie pointed out, for the child out of the East End of Long Island. I mean, there are similarities. The other thing I would say is to Bonnie's point, I am old enough to remember when there were Black mayors in every major city. Wilson Goode in Philadelphia, David Dinkins in New York, Harold Washington in Chicago. In less than a decade, all gone. And in my studying of history in the 1870s, there were at least 30 or so Black congressmen walking the halls of Congress. Less than 50 years, all gone. So I agree with you, Bonnie. Having a president is not, Black president is not necessarily an indication that we have made great leaps. I mean, so people have been talking about trauma. which obviously I've been dealing with in the novel. And Andrina and I have been having plenty of discussions about the way in which the issues in the novel resonate today. But I am certainly agree with the panelists also about they're doing it. And it's like Stan New Hamer said, we do have to look to our young people because they really are the future and the people who are going to carry the torch forward. But I certainly have enjoyed the panel today, and I've certainly learned a lot about the way in which issues are played out in your community. So thank you very much for inviting me.
I would just like to say, Bonnie, Allanah, Andrina, Willie, and Jeffrey, thank you so much for your time. My name is Sara Cochran. I'm Executive Director of the Church. We will be doing more of these. I will be drawing on all of your expertise. And please remember that Jeffrey's book, along with many, many other wonderful books, are available at our local bookstore, Canio Books, which is in person and online. Thank you very much for spending part of your Sunday with us. We look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Have a good day, guys.
Thank you for having me, everybody.
See you later.
Much.